Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Kenyans and patriots, welcome to Court Helicopter Explainer. My name is Abner Collins Mangu, and we meet again today. Today we'll be discussing the Prevention of Terrorism Act, an act that was recently enacted to curb terrorism. Now, perhaps to give it a background, we need to remind ourselves the history of our beloved country, Kenya, and terrorism. Now, on August 7th, 1998, Kenya experienced the worst terrorism act yet in the history of this republic, where the Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden, bombed the Ufangamano House that went to ashes and the Cooperative House together with the United States Embassy in Kenya. Now, I happened to be one of the survivors of this incident, so this is something that still remains a painful memory and a scar in my life, although we celebrate being survivors. We lost at least 210 Kenyans, and other foreigners lost their lives. Now, on 28th November 2002, Kenya experienced again another act of terror, wherein the Paradise Hotel in Kikambala was bombed. Again, we lost 13 patriots, 13 citizens, and other foreigners lost their life. Now, the United States government, under the leadership of Hussein Barack Obama, on the 2nd of May 2011, in one of the best operations done by the US Navy SEALs and its security agencies, managed to kill Osama bin Laden. Fast forward to 21st September 2013. Again, Kenya faced another huge terror attack. And in this instance was the Westgate shopping mall attack, wherein 71 Kenyans, at least 71 Kenyans, lost their lives. But in this instance, we were facing terror from a terror group from our neighboring country, that is Somalia, the Al-Shabaab. Relentless, on 2nd April 2015, another terrible attack happened, and now not on the general public, but to university students, that is the Garissa University College, where again, we experienced loss of 148 students who are in the country. Most of them were killed doing their morning prayers, members of the Christian Union organization. Another terror attack happened on the 15th of January 2019. That is the Nairobi Dusit D2 complex attack, where at least not less than 20 Kenyans again lost their lives. Now, these occurrences of terror led to the legislature to have it fit to have a legislation placed in order to fight terrorism and terrorism financing in Kenya. And that led to the enactment of the Prevention of Terrorism Act, better known as POTA, which in its definition is an act of parliament to provide measure for detection and prevention of terrorism activities. Now, Section 2 of this Act defines what is a terrorism act. And one is an act that involves use of violence against a person. 2, it's an act that endangers life. I've talked about the loss of lives. It is also an act that creates a serious risk as to the life and property of people. Fourthly, it's an act that results in serious damage and destruction of property. I mentioned the Ufangamano House. It went to its ground. It went to ashes. To date, that is what is called the Memorial Park. There used to stand a building that was built by the teachers. It is also an act that involves use of firearm and explosives. Again, if you look, for example, at the August 8th attack that we faced, a huge bomb exploded. The Kikambala attack, an aeroplane was shot down, was brought down. The hotel was bombed. Westgate, they used bombs to occupy and terrorize the building. Dusit, the two, heavy machinery was used, that is gun. People are shot dead. And again, finally, it's an act that involves release of dangerous toxins. That is, use of toxic gases that are capable of making people lose life. So what are the aims as defined under Part B of Section 2 of the Act? What are the aims of this Terrorism Act? One, a terrorist act is an act that is meant to intimidate or cause fear to the general public. When these things happened, or these occurrences happened, the whole country was at a standstill. The whole country was in fear. Previously, we did not even used to have security checks, for example, when you are entering shopping malls. So these were extra measures that were put in place to curb terror. So these are acts that are meant to intimidate or cause fear. Number two, these are acts that are specifically meant to intimidate government so that they can heed to specific calls or specific causes that are not within the confines of the law. So they are not only meant to intimidate citizens, they are also meant to intimidate government. Finally, these are acts that are meant to destabilize religious, political, and constitutional institutions of a country. You will find that some of these terrorism acts have taken very radical views of certain religions, so that if you are not part of them, you are killed. If you are part of them, you survive. But it's as a result of radicalization, not the true cause of whatever that religion subscribes to. Section 4.1 now creates the offense of a terrorism act. And if a person is found guilty for commission of a terrorism act, then is on conviction culpable to serve a term not exceeding 30 years. We've had terrorists who've been convicted under Section 4.1 of the terrorism POTA of the POTA. 4.2 subscribes that if this terror act leads to death, then it leads to conviction of life imprisonment. Previously, we had the death sentence, but as you all know, it was declared unconstitutional. So if the terrorist act causes death, then you are capable of life imprisonment. Now, why we are here today on the explainer to look at this act is the recent occurrences of the year 2025. Now, on Sabasaba and 25th of July, there were acts during protests that occasioned and brought about the burning down of various police stations and the Kikuyu law courts. And after these occurrences, for example, during the burning down of the Kikuyu law courts, when the Honorable Chief Justice visited Kikuyu law courts, termed those acts of arson and burning down to be acts of terror, he was flanked by the Interior Cabinet Secretary. Shortly after, we saw youths being presented before court and arraigned and charged with commission of a terrorist act. So the question again that is before us, do those acts of arson and damage to property in the police stations, in the various courts, do they amount to terrorist act? Now, if you look again at Section 2, there is an exemption to this damage of property, this serious damage to property. And if you look at subsection 3 in the definition, it provides that provided that such kind of actions are as a result of demonstration and protests, then the same cannot be termed as terrorism act. Act of protest, as we all know, is provided for under Article 37 of the Constitution. While we strongly condemn violent protests, protests that cause loss of life, protests that cause damage to property, but the crafters and drafters of this act, at the point of drafting the act, saw the wisdom and exempted things that result as an act of protest from being defined as terrorist act. So 25 youth were arraigned in Kikuyu, others were arraigned in Makongeni, and even recently, the aftermath of the death of the late Albert Ojwang in Mawego. Again, 8 citizens have been arraigned in court to face terror charges as a result of the burning down, for example, of Mawego police station, which was an act of pure fury of the citizens, of the death of the resident who was arrested at his home while having a meal with the family, checked in at Mawego police station, then driven to Central police station, where Albert Ojwang faced his untimely death. As during his burial, the residents, as a result of process, the Mawego police station was burned down. So 8 citizens again face terror charges under this act. Now, it is important to note that there is a specialized court that has been gazetted by the Chief Justice to try terror charges, and that is the Kahawa Law Courts. So this is the only court with the jurisdiction to handle these terror charges. So all these cases are being held at the Kahawa Law Courts. Now, I am aware that there has been constitutional petitions filed at the Milimani High Court challenging the sobriety and propriety of these terror charges that these Kenyans are facing. And the question or the argument is one: do we equate acts of vandalism, acts of damage of property, acts of arson to acts of terror that were occasioned by the likes of Osama bin Laden, the likes of Fazul, and others who are even facing extradition and charges in the US? Do they really qualify under charges under POTA? And what precedents then do we want to set as a country for offenses under the Prevention of Terrorism Act? That is all for today. Thank you for joining the explainer. Please feel free, if you have any question, to place the same in the comments. We will be able to answer and have more interaction with you. Thank you. God bless you, and blessed New Year ahead. Thank you. Good day.